Land of the dreamers, city of danger. Came from the trenches, walked through the darkness, fighting temptations. Surrounded by devils, I'm trying to stay faithful, still a believer. Got God on my side, a spiritual war, and angels and demons.
So good day everyone. Welcome to this series of Made to Thrive, Not Just to Survive. Series of podcasts here to support people who are facing adversities, who are looking to heal in a healthy way, and really transform your life, transform your perspective, really become healthy in your mindset, in your body and in your heart. Before I introduce my guest today, I just want to explain a little bit more about why I'm doing this and the purpose behind these podcasts. The world can seem like a dark place sometimes, especially with some of the events going on, and we internally have a lot to deal with in ourselves and in our lives. And I think it's important to recognise that we're all on this journey of life, which can sometimes feel exhilarating and at other times really hard and really dark. And I'm all for everybody supporting each other as much as possible, because I think we're here to do that, and we're different for a reason, but ultimately we are all on this path of life, and the more we can do to support ourselves and be healthy, happy and abundant in ourselves, the more we can help other people too. So I am doing this because I've been on my own healing journey recently, and I've come out of it feeling incredibly aware, enlightened and determined to do something about this and support others along the way. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you my coach, mentor and fellow content creator, Jesse Wynyard. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you, Lisa. That was amazing. That was a really beautiful introduction, and it's an honor for me to be here as your first guest on this podcast. And I just want to say, before we dive into the conversation, I'm just very proud of you for taking this step to create this, because it's something that I think is very needed. Everything you just shared is so important. You know, you're right. Life can be very challenging. There's a lot of problems in the world right now, and we need more of these conversations. We need more people to create these types of platforms, and you answered the call, and here we are. So yeah, well done, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jesse. So I wanted to obviously speak to you today because you've got quite a behind you. I think we've come across each other. Our paths have crossed because you run programs now to support people in creating content, in connecting with their purpose, and really kind of following through on in that space. But it hasn't always been that easy for you. And whilst you've shared some of your history with people, I think it'd be really good to get a flavour of kind of where you've been, how you've come through things, and how what tips you'd give to people. So before we get into that though, I just want to, I guess, give people an idea of what you're doing right now, and what life's looking like for you.
Yeah, for sure. Right now, for me, I'm in a season of my life of really just living in purpose. That's the stage of my life that I'm in right now. I've gone through a lot in my life, went through a lot of challenges and a lot of, like yourself, a lot of healing and a lot of growth. And it's through a lot of the healing that I've had to go through that I've found a purpose. And the purpose has led me to living an amazing life, doing what I love to do. I'm very grateful and blessed to have created the life that I live with my beautiful fiance. We run a company called Light Warrior, which obviously you've been a part of for a while now. And, it's just a lot of blessings in our life at the moment. We've created an amazing heart-centered business which is designed specifically to impact people like yourself, creators, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, people that have a message and a story to share, or a desire to make an impact in the world. And at the same time, while living a very purpose-driven lifestyle, we're also living a lifestyle that we have been manifesting for a long time. You know, I was just talking to Sakula before this podcast, my partner, and we were just reflecting on our journey of like when we first met, and how we were out. Well, I was definitely at like a rock bottom place when I first met her, and how we set a lot of goals and visions for ourselves when we were in our young early 20s, you know, for the life that we want to create for ourselves. And we're just dreaming big, thinking big, imagining what could we create, what could we achieve, and planting a lot of seeds.
Yeah.
And I feel like now we're at a stage in our life where those seeds have come to harvest, and we're just really just reaping a lot of the rewards, and living in the vision that we set for ourselves, which is really, really cool. You know, we have a business that is thriving. We're running amazing retreats around the world. We get to travel. We're here in Sweden right now.
Yeah.
I'm originally from New Zealand, but here in Sweden, I was in we were in Bali a few weeks ago running a retreat. I was in the Gold Coast before that in Australia speaking at an event. We were in Japan before that where I proposed to Sakula. In a few days' time, I get to perform music at a festival here in Sweden, going to Spain next week, going to Costa Rica at the end of the year. So yeah, business is amazing, lifestyle is amazing. I'm also a musician, and I've got an album that I'm releasing next week, in the next month, sorry. A new song that's dropping on Friday. It's my birthday on Thursday, which is
Yeah.
literally two days away from now. So it's a very powerful time to be doing this podcast, and
Yeah.
there's a lot to be grateful for. But like you said, life is dualistic. There's the highs, and then there's the lows. There's the light, there's the dark. There's the breakdowns, and then there's the breakthroughs. And I'm just grateful because everything that I have created for myself now, and everything that I'm about to step into in my next chapter of my journey, it wasn't easy to get here. You know, there was a big journey to get to this moment. So I'm just grateful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Grateful.
I mean, it is inspirational to just, I mean, without even knowing your background, to hear what you're doing at the moment, that the level of self-belief you have in yourself, the you know, what it must take to get to this point. But knowing it's also possible, you know, so for people watching, whatever you are going through, my message is that you can get beyond that current situation. It's not a forever thing. It doesn't have to be a forever thing. It takes choice, I think. It takes determination. It takes a lot of self-love. Quite often, I think filling your own cup first before you can pour out into others.
Yes.
And self-belief. And I think you've got it in mountains.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And it's amazing. But yeah, I know, as I said, I know it's not always been sunshine and roses. And what I wanted to do today was delve a bit deeper and ask you to share, you know, a little bit about your history and how you kind of made this transformation. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I was born into a very interesting life. I've come to realize in my journey, or this is a belief of mine that I've come to realize and believe, that we choose our lives, and before we come here, and I felt like I chose this life. I felt like I chose a life with a lot of big life lessons that I had to learn in a very short space of time. In the first 23 years of my life, I experienced some of the hardest challenges that you could experience, some of the hardest life lessons that you could have to learn. I was born into a household of domestic violence, so I was raised around a lot of abuse, a lot of fighting between my parents specifically. So I had a lot of childhood trauma from a very young age. I believe before I even came into this world, while I was still in the womb, I was picking up on a lot of the trauma around me.
Yeah.
And then my father left me at me and my mum at a very young age. So I was about 6 or 7 when he left for good. Within those first 7 years, there was a lot of on and off between my parents. They would break up, they'll get back together again. A lot of the first few years of my life, we were living in women's refuge homes. We're actually on the run from him, my father, for a few of those years, and then he just fully left when I was around 7 or 8, I think it was. So that was traumatizing for
Yeah.
me, and I remember that led me into just developing a lot of emotional challenges, as you would as a young child, because you don't. I never got taught the tools on how to process what was going on, because my mum was just trying to process what was going on.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't even have the tools to deal with that trauma. So I was just going along with everything that was happening. That led to a lot of mental health issues as I got older. I had a lot of anger. I think there was a lot of suppressed anger that I had from my early childhood. Anger towards my father for leaving, anger towards my mum because there was a part of me that thought that she did something to drive him away, anger towards myself because I subconsciously blamed myself for him leaving. So there's a lot of anger, and again, didn't have the tools on how to process that anger. So what happened was I bottled it all up. And I think a lot of men do this. They don't know how to process their emotions and feel their emotions, resolve their emotions, bottled it all up. And that just stayed bottled up until my teenage years. And then in my teenage years, when I started to go through puberty, my testosterone level started to rise. I went into high school. That's when the anger started to come out in ugly ways. I was raised in the hoods of West Auckland in New Zealand, in a very, in a poorer part of town. The area that I was raised in was a lot of gang activity, a lot of crime, um, a lot of violence, a lot of fighting, a lot of criminal activity taking place. And that was just a very hostile environment where there was a lot of other young men that had come from similar places as me. There was a lot of broken men that were raised in broken homes,
Yeah.
like myself. And when you're raised in an environment like that, and you've got a lot of trauma that you don't know how to deal with, you suppress that trauma and you wear a mask. You develop a persona, especially as men. We develop these personas, these tough guy personas, and build these egos. And when I went into high school, that really came out, and I just was just really struggling to find my identity, know who I was. That ended up leading me to addictions at a young age. Smoked a lot of weed, alcohol addictions, got into party pills, and all that kind of stuff at a very young age. Ended up dropping out of high school at the age of 16, ran away from home at the age of 17, and went through pretty much a year of just doing a lot of drugs, drinking, partying, getting into fights, committing crimes, just going down this really dark path. And I realized that I was going to either end up dead or in prison.
Yeah.
That was the path that I was heading down. So I had a realization at the age of 17, need to change my life around, moved back home, moved back home, started to resolve a lot of my issues. One of the big mindset shifts that I had was I needed to take responsibility. I couldn't be a victim of circumstances. I couldn't stay stuck in that life. I had to be the one to make a change.
Yeah.
And that led me onto a path of bettering myself, trying to improve myself. Became a personal trainer, got into the entrepreneurship journey at the age of 18, so I was really young. And I actually was able to turn my life around. That's when I started manifesting. My mum was very spiritual, and she always used to talk about manifestation and manifesting the life that you want. So I actually manifested my dream job at the age of 18, which was being a personal trainer on a cruise ship. I got the chance to travel the world at a very young age. got into public speaking at the age of 19, very, very young, and developed this passion for speaking and coaching. And I found a version of myself that was like a brand new version of myself. You know, I was able to recreate myself. I didn't have to be defined from the broken boy from the hood, you know.
Yeah.
So I got to travel the world. I would travel to over 20 countries at the age of 18, 19, which was an amazing life-changing experience. Opened me up to so much more than the box that I was raised in. And then what happened was I had a son. So I became a father at the age of 19 to a partner that I was with at the time that was back in New Zealand. Became a father at 19. Went through a big breakup with his mum at the age of 21. 2 years later, it was quite a toxic relationship, and ended up leaving that relationship, which was also a massive life lesson. And this is when it all started to get really, really challenging. Had my son at 19, ended that relationship at 21. When I ended that relationship, my mum also got diagnosed with cancer at the same time. So was a young single father at the time, just out of this, exiting out of this toxic relationship. And my mum was battling cancer, brain tumor. And those 2 years, I would say, were probably the hardest years of my life, because over those 2 years, my mum was deteriorating. She had stage 4, I think it was stage 3, stage 4 brain cancer, massive tumor in the back of her head, and they couldn't do anything about it. 2 years later, she passed away at the age of 23, and that journey was very difficult for me, very challenging, because I had to watch her deteriorate, and in the last few months of her life, she was barely conscious. She didn't recognize who I was. She had onset dementia, so she just lost a lot of memory, and then she passed away. So I had to experience all of that stuff within 23 years of my life, the birth of my son, the death of my mom, and all of those internal, mental, and emotional, and spiritual challenges, all in a very short space of time. So it was very challenging, but like I said before, it was the path that I chose. It was the life that I chose coming into this, because fast forward to now, looking back on this, I needed to go through all of those experiences to become the person that I was supposed to be, and to learn all the valuable lessons that I was supposed to learn. But it took a lot of healing, and to be fully transparent, I'm still healing through a lot of those things. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm by no means perfect, but I feel like I've gotten to a place in my healing journey where I've been able to transform a lot of that pain into power and into purpose, and that's why I do what I do now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been through in a very short space of time a seismic shift, like huge. When you described your like earlier days and that choice you made, that realization you had about either ending up dead or in prison, and then taking the decision to do something about that and manifest a new path, a new way forward. How did you do that? Because it's to say it is one thing, to actually do it, that's it's a whole a huge mindset shift, a whole lifestyle change. I mean, you must have had to let go of a lot of people, deal with, just deal with so much more than you probably anticipated.
Yeah, for sure. The realization came as a result of knowing that I had a lot of potential. If there was one thing that my mum taught me, was that she always taught me that if you can conceive it in the mind, and if you can believe it in your heart, then you can achieve it in your reality. That was something that she taught me. And she always taught me, even though we didn't come from much, she always said, you can do, be, and have, and create whatever you want in your life. That was always like she drilled into me. She always said that you have greatness within you, and you're destined for greatness. And that's why our mission statement is embody your greatness for our company. So I always had this in my mind. I always had this expectation that I was going to do something amazing in my life. And when I was in that dark phase of my life, I realized I was wasting that potential. And I came to this realization that if I was not going to take responsibility and do something about it, then no one else was, and I was gonna waste my life away. So it was really funny because a lot of people like to kind of talk down on New Year's resolutions, right? Say that they don't work and stuff. I actually sit in because this realization happened. It was actually funny. This New Year's resolution happened when I was coming down off drugs, and I was coming down off drugs after a New Year's festival.
Okay.
So I was at a New Year's festival. I was coming down off drugs. I was not having a good time because I was going through all these problems. One of my good friends who was on a positive path pulled me aside, and he was like, "Bro, you need to sort your shit out." You know, he just had the hard conversation that I needed to have, and he's like, "If you don't do anything, then you're just gonna waste away, and you need to just decide what you want to do and just do it. You can't just keep waiting around. Nothing's gonna change unless you change." And you know, when you're a broken, traumatized teenager coming down of drugs, and you feel like your life is just turning to shit, and then someone says that to you, it's like that was like an angel in disguise. You know, it was like God was speaking to me in that moment through my friend. And the next day, which was the 1st of January, I can't remember what the year it was. I think it was like 2012, maybe 2011, 2012. That first day of the year, it just something clicked within me, and I had to leave the environment that I was in. So I was living in a drug house at the time.
Right.
So I was dealing drugs. People were coming to buy and sell drugs all the time. There's always parties happening at this place, and I realized I needed to remove myself from the environment because as long as I was going to be around drugs and parties and all this stuff, I wasn't going to be able to make a change. So I had to remove myself from the environment. The second thing that I needed to do was I needed to resolve my relationship with my mum at the time, because the reason why I ran away from home is because we had issues. We were all having problems and conflicts, and I needed to resolve that relationship. So I had to fix the relationship, remove myself from that situation, and then I had to get my life back on track. And the first thing that I realized I needed to do was I needed a career path. I needed to find something that was going to give me purpose and give me something to work towards. And that's when I started to think about, okay, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go back to school. I want to work. I want to do something, but I want to do something that is fulfilling. At the time, the one thing that was like my saving grace at the time was fitness. So fitness, you know, specifically like working out at the gym and martial arts and training at the gym, that was like my therapy. It was like my safe haven. I'd go there and I'd train, and that was like my meditation. It was like my healing sanctuary, if you will. And I knew that was the thing that was like keeping me sane through all of those hard times. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just follow what I'm passionate about. Because the only thing I was passionate about at the time was fitness. So I'm going to get a personal training certificate. I'm going to become a trainer because that's something that I want to do. It's enjoyable, and it gives me a pathway. It gives me a pathway of opportunity to get into something that I can do to make an income, but also to help other people, because it's helping me, so I surely it can help other people. So it's when I started to think about how can I help other people, but also create a life that I want for myself as well. That's when I first started to think in that type of way.
Right.
And then I just started taking action, you know, and I just started taking one action at a time, and then that led to me joining the course, doing my certifications, and then during that time, I was redeveloping my connection with my mom, and she started getting me onto books, reading different types of books.
Okay.
I started reading into manifestation books, law of attraction. Started to tap back into like spiritual practices, praying and visualizing and stuff like this. And I was at a place where I was at rock bottom. So whatever tools that I could learn to help me get out of it, I was just open to it. I was just like a sponge, just soaking it all up. and I just put it all into practice. And it was really funny because all these manifestation techniques, I just put it into action. From the moment that I had that realization to the moment that I got fully qualified as a personal trainer was 3 months.
That quick?
Yeah, I did a 6 month
Wow.
course in 3 months because what happened was this is quite funny. The thing that I was manifesting, right? Because like when I first started learning about manifestation, I read a book called The Secret, one of the
Yes.
OG manifestation books, and I didn't know all the complexities about quantum physics and stuff. All I was reading was think and visualize what you want, write it down every single day, and visualize it happening. That's all I could go with. 17, 18-year-old kid. I was like, okay, let's do it. I'm just gonna visualize, write it down. The universe started to guide me on this path because the course that I did, the personal training course that I did, we had to do this in our course. So every single day, I ended up in this course, and every single day we had to write down our goals. And I was like, okay, this is what the same stuff that I'm learning in this book. So I'm gonna start writing down these goals. And I didn't know what I wanted. All I knew was that I wanted to make money to help live a life, to create a life for myself, and to help my mom because she was financially struggling. She was working like multiple jobs. So I want to make good money. I want to do what I love. And I also wanted to travel the world.
Okay.
That's all I knew I wanted to do. I wrote those things
Yeah.
down every single day, visualized it. I remember being in the shower in my mum's like old house, just sitting in the shower visualizing.
Yeah.
Before I would go to bed, I'd visualize it, write it in the morning. I was just constantly filling my mind with these visions. And then within that course, there was an opportunity to come up. 2 job opportunities came up for me to work overseas.
Right.
And then as soon as that popped into my life, I was like, this stuff works. I'm gonna work towards that. And that's when I just really doubled down and focused on it.
Yeah.
Within 5 months, I was on a plane to Rome
Wow.
after that realization moment on January 1st. So it was about a 4 to 5 month journey, and then the rest of that year I was traveling around the world, coaching people. I had to learn how to become a speaker. I was speaking on stages and on these in different countries, making more money than I've ever made before. It was a wild transformation in such a short space of time, so.
It sounds like you wholeheartedly committed, maybe without even realizing, to the whole, the process of manifestation, and you just kind of went with it, and you clearly are a powerful manifester because you did it so quickly. But I'm fascinated with the power of the power of thought, the power of mind, the power of focusing on what you want, because I honestly believe it works. I thought about this moment about 6 months ago.
Here we are. Exactly. This is a perfect example of having the vision, seeing it in your mind.
Yeah.
Like my mom said, conceiving it in the mind, believing it in the heart,
Yeah.
achieving it in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Really attaching the feelings to the thought. And I just think it's incredible. But for you to have moved through, I mean, not that is pretty impressive in itself, but for you to have moved through the emotional side of things, the difficult relationship in the end with your mum, and also with what you went through with your dad. Like, how did you, there's a lot of people out there who've gone through abusive situations, whatever part of the family they're in. Where did you get to with that? Have you come to a place of forgiveness and acceptance, or how is that working for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. The emotions was the hardest part for me. That's been one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn on my journey, is how to manage my emotions, how to process them, how to make sense of them. Yeah. Emotions are a weird, sticky, challenging thing because they really drive our decision making. They can take control of us,
Yeah.
And for me, as I've mentioned, I was very emotionally unstable as a kid. Like I said, I had a lot of anger problems. And in the first, 21, 22, 23 years of my life, these anger problems would express themselves in like mental breakdowns. I'd have mental
Right.
breakdowns. Sometimes I'd have these like rage attacks where I like punch holes in walls and destroy furniture and get quite aggressive, you
Yeah.
know. It would lead me to fighting people, you know, just getting into fights when I'll go to parties and stuff like that in my younger years, you know. So um, emotional intelligence was not a skill that I was taught, and I had to make a lot of mistakes over and over and over and over and over again to get to the point where I realized I need to work on this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to really work on this, because if I don't, it's gonna continue to get me into trouble, but it's not gonna end well for anyone.
Yeah.
You know, I really need to work on this. And what that led me to, like I said before, taking responsibility over my life. It led me to actually seeking the help to work on my emotions.
Yeah.
So I had to actually learn about my emotions. I had to learn about why I feel this way. I had to learn about how emotions in the body works. You know, the mind, the body, the spirit, the emotions, like how it all interconnects. And I had to do a lot of healing. This is where my
Mm.
healing journey began, especially after my mum passed away. I
Yeah.
went through this phase of my life where I was very, very angry. All my anger
Mm.
came to the surface because I was raised very spiritual, and I was raised in the Christian religion. I had a very deep connection with God and Jesus from a young age, and I ended up leaving the religion in my late teens because I didn't resonate with a lot of the religious stuff, but I always had the connection with God. You know,
Yeah.
God was like, I always had maintained that connection from a very young age, still do to this very day. But during that time in my life, I was angry at God. You know, I was like,
Right.
how could you let all this happen to
Yeah.
me? You know, I was blaming God for everything, right? And after my mum passed away, it led me on this journey, I guess you could say, spiritual awakening, or what I like to call it a reawakening, because I was very spiritual when I was young,
Yeah.
because I was raised that way, but I kind of closed off to that part of myself. And then when my mum passed away, it re it reawakened, you know,
Okay.
especially, and I've noticed this. It's really funny. It's just coming to me now. Like, I've lost a few people in my life, friends, close friends of mine, obviously my mom. And every time I've lost someone, every time someone has like left this world and passed on to the next, it's been a very deep spiritual experience for me, because you know, death is like a gateway into the 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 other side. You know,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
gateway into the unknown, the unseen.
Mm.
And I was raised with a lot of, I guess, what you would call like spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
You know, that I had growing up, and it helped me connect to that. But what it did was it really led me onto this path of healing. I realized that I had a lot of internal stuff that I needed to heal. And the way that I realized that was, it led me. There was a point after my mom passed away. I'm kind of going around in circles. After my mom passed away, I was angry. Um, I was a entrepreneur building my business at the time, and my business was actually doing well. Um, I had met my new partner, Sakula. We were in a relationship. I had manifested a great home for myself, a business that was doing really well. I was had a very successful personal training business, making multiple six figures a year. I was building my online business at the time, driving my dream car. I was doing all like
Yeah.
I was living a good life on the outside,
Yeah.
but on the inside, I was just like deeply depressed and anxious, and I had a lot of emotions, you know. So
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to process these emotions and this grief, I turned to drinking, I turned to drugs again, you know. So I kind of relapsed back into that old
Yes.
lifestyle a little bit, even though I was still functioning as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. I
Yeah.
was behind the scenes. I was drinking and partying every weekend. I was doing cocaine on the weekend. I was doing, you know, MDMA and smoking weed all the time. I was doing all these hard drugs. And it even got harder. I even got down to the point where I was smoking crack. I was getting into some really hard drugs, and when I got into these drugs, it started to mess with my brain chemistry. Because I was constantly living in this up and down, like chemical roller coaster every
Yeah.
week. I would have these highs on the weekend. I'd have these massive lows, highs on the weekend, massive lows, and you do that over and over and over again. It catches up with you. And
Yeah.
it got to this point where um, I I actually tried to kill myself. So I actually got to this point where I tried to kill myself. I tried to hang myself because I was just in this deep dark hole, and I felt like I was just going crazy. I just felt like I couldn't. Psychologists will probably label it some psychological term, but I felt like I was really just losing myself, and I just wanted to end everything because I just couldn't do it anymore. And I remember that day. I remember it very clearly. I was coming down off drugs. I was hungover. I hadn't slept for days, and I tried to do this thing. I tried to take my own life, and I remember just lying on my bathroom floor, just crying, just sobbing, crying so much because I was like, why? Like, what am I doing? Like I've got a son, I've got a partner in the other room. Like, what am I actually doing? How could I get to this point where I would actually try and do this? It's just like a lot of shame and guilt and
Yeah.
regret. And when that moment happened, as deep and as dark as and heavy as it was, it opened me up to the healing journey. Like that's when I
Yeah.
really realized, okay, I need to really like do some deep healing around this. Like this is not all good. This is not normal. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what healing was. I didn't know what I needed. I don't know if I needed a therapy or a psychologist. I always had a lot of like, um, I always had an aversion to therapists and psychologists and stuff like that. Because I had a lot of problems as a kid. I would always have people trying to send me psychologists to work with and stuff. And I was
Okay.
I was always like, there's no problems with me. I don't
Yeah.
need this. Like,
Yeah.
you're trying to make me out to be this thing that I'm not. But then I realized I need to do something. I don't know what that means, but I need to do
Yeah.
something. And then that just opened me up to the healing journey. And the healing journey took me in many different directions. There was a lot of different things that I had to do, lots of different modalities that I had to learn, lots of different spaces that I had to go into, a lot of different um, things I had to do to actually learn how to heal these emotions that I was
Yeah.
this trauma. That's what it was. It was deep, deep trauma that I
Yeah.
had in my body, in my mind, in my psyche, and I had to just dive into this journey of healing, which consisted of many different things.
Yeah.
But it was just the willingness to embark on that journey.
Yeah.
You get to that moment when you're like, okay, I need to heal, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna figure out what I need to do. It was kind of like the other taking responsibility thing that I talked about before,
Yeah.
as a similar sort of realization, but this time directed towards my own healing of my traumas.
Yeah.
And that was a long journey, and I feel like now where I'm at now, like fast forward what 8 9 years now, yeah, about 8 years. I feel like I'm finally at a point where I feel like I've completed a lot of that healing. I'm still healing. I'm
Yeah.
not saying like I'm a fully
Yeah.
healed person, but I've ended a lot of those cycles of resolved a lot of these core issues of um, I've understood I've dived into the deep dark shadows within
Yeah.
myself and confronted everything
Yeah.
everything within myself that I've needed to confront, all those shadow aspects, all those demons, and I've had to just shine light in the darkness in all areas of my life. And we could go into specifics of what
Yeah.
that looks like, but I think that was what allowed me to you know get to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I mean, what a journey. And I, whilst we have a very different kind of history within our lives, I can totally, it resonates with me when you talk about really kind of going within to heal. And I've been through my own journey with this, and I found it helpful at the start to have counselling, conventional therapy on certain things. But really, for me, the biggest shift happened when I went inside of me. I did turn to my own spiritual practices. I facing that dark stuff, which you don't want to do. I think we're so programmed to run away from that, aren't we?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to blame everyone and everything else outside of you. And I'm not saying, there's no one else at fault in these things, but I think the real growth and transformation comes when you go deep within yourself and really kind of take that responsibility to think about, and change how you think about something, how you feel about things, and take that control of your life. Because I think you can do that. Everyone can take control of their lives. You can't necessarily control everyone else, but you can be that change. You can show it, you can be it, you can demonstrate it, and it has a ripple effect on people around you. So I'm sure as you started to change, you attracted better into your life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's a reoccurring theme that's shown up in my healing journey, which is it's a cliche thing that you probably hear a lot, but it's letting go of the old and calling in the new. And what you're explaining about going into the darkness and stuff, the best way, the word that I use to just sum up everything that is shadow work. It's just facing the shadow, and the shadow represents that dark side of ourselves. It represents all of the suppressed traumas. It represents the dark side of life and the world and reality. But for me, like looking in the mirror and seeing my shadow self and confronting that version of myself, and it's really, really interesting because I remember I've had many profound experiences in my healing journey, deep spiritual experiences that just shifted me and changed me. One of them being, I just remember looking in the mirror one day during this process and just seeing my shadow self. Like, when I say my shadow self, I mean the version of me that was a bad person, the version of me that had made mistakes, the version of me that had hurt people, the version of me that had lied, that cheated, that stole, that, like, I had to face all of those parts of myself, and I could see it in the mirror, and it looked like I was looking at like a demon. Like, that's what it felt like. I was looking in the mirror, and I was just seeing this evil person. And I remember doing this like mirror work and just looking at this part of myself. I was like, and I was afraid of that version of myself. Like, I was like, it brought up fear looking at that, confronting all of that. But what I found was, the more I looked at that version of myself, the more I was just able to just like hold space for myself in that process. That demon turned into this wounded child. And I saw this wounded little boy that was just broken and misunderstood, and that just didn't know how to express himself. And I just saw this wounded boy. And as soon as I saw that shift, it was like a actual visionary kind of experience. I saw this evil version of myself transform into this wounded child. As soon as I saw that shift take place, I had this overwhelming sense of compassion come over me. I had this overwhelming sense of compassion come over me, and empathy. I really just understood why I was that way. It just all clicked. It all made sense. And it was in that moment that I was able to first start to forgive myself, and that was a journey. That wasn't a moment in time. That was a consistent journey, over time. But I was able to begin to forgive myself, and I was also able to begin to forgive the people that have also hurt me and created that hurt. Forgiving the old relationships, forgiving my father, forgiving people that have double crossed me and hurt me before. And that was an ongoing journey, you know, forgiving my father, for example. Like, that was like, it's something that I've had to go really, really deep into, you know, because with me and my father, he didn't just leave out of my life, and that was the only thing. Like, he came back into my life later on in my life.
Okay.
He came back in,
Right.
and he didn't just come back um, in a peaceful, loving way. He came back in a really nasty and aggressive way. So when he came back into my life, he was very, very against everything that I was doing. He was against me becoming a speaker. He was against me, you know, talking, you know, creating content online. He was against me being a coach. He was very extremist Christian behavior.
Oh, okay.
You know, that kind of behavior where you're, you know, anything that isn't aligned with the word is evil. You know, so he saw me as this evil person that was trying to, you know, you know what it's like in those types of religious spaces, and I had to put up with that for up until this very day. Still have to put up with it, you know. So it's been a constant lesson of like having to receive all this hateful, negative, disempowering, you know,
Yeah.
slander from my own father. All I want was forgiveness, and all I want is to be able to heal the relationship.
Yeah.
But I just never got it. I just was never able to do it, despite my efforts of trying. You know, I
Yeah.
actually tried to heal, tried to resolve things with him.
Yeah.
Just never worked. You know,
Yeah.
no matter what I tried to do. So learning forgiveness for him through that journey has been one of, I know we're talking about spiritual lessons, but this has been one of the biggest spiritual lessons for me, because I had to learn how to see beyond all of that. Because
Right.
obviously there's the wounded child within me that would get completely offended and triggered by all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I had to see beyond that. I had to learn how to dissolve
Yeah.
this situation into the spiritual lesson that it's teaching me.
Yeah.
And for me, it was number one, it was understanding why he was that way, and I just understood that he was traumatized. Like,
Yeah.
he was no different to me. He came
Yeah.
from generational trauma, you know, and so on and so forth down the family tree. I realized that when I was healing, it wasn't just me that I was healing; it was generations.
Yes.
You know, it was a generational healing, you know, and I realized that the reason why I had to be the one to heal and break those generational cycles is because I have a son, you know,
Yes.
and if I don't change, then I'm going to pass it on to him, and he's going to pass it on to his kids, you know, and it's going to perpetuate the cycle. So understanding and acceptance of why my father was that way, compassion and empathy for that, despite the hurt and the pain that he caused, and forgiving him through that, you know, despite not understanding, forgiving him despite the pain that it caused, you know, that was like, I think to this day is probably one of my biggest lessons in life, you know,
Yeah.
is this, you know, and what that's done for me is, even though it's been extremely challenging, and I still have days where I'm just like, damn,
Yeah.
I still have my days, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but what it's taught me is it's taught me how to have deep empathy and compassion for myself,
Yeah.
um, as well as deep compassion and empathy for other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a superpower, because now I can really connect with people, and I really understand people on a very, very deep level now, that I don't think a lot of people understand, you know, because they haven't had to step outside their own wounded, traumatized ego and see a situation like this from a spiritual perspective. You know, it's
Yeah.
not like a normal thing that people go through. You know
No.
what I mean?
No. But I think it's so powerful. Like when you speak about looking at yourself in the mirror and sort of that whole experience of seeing that evil person, but then realizing it was a wounded, you know, you were wounded and it was trauma, and it was it's you have to, I think you have to go through that first, your own personal sort of perspective shift and forgiveness for yourself, and accepting that you've just had to go through this journey within yourself first. And it makes it a lot easier to kind of then extend that forgiveness to others, because you see a lot of the time people who are, you know, projecting that type of stuff, they are just unhealed people, and it's really their journey to take on, and we can only, you know, the other people around can only do the right thing for themselves and not aggravate that situation. And I think that's it's a hard but powerful lesson, and but must have created a real marker in the sand for you in terms of your own growth and change. And just I think the other thing is, what I found hard, really hard, but really rewarding when it did happen, was learning how to just let go. You know, releasing, giving yourself permission to just let go of the shit that doesn't serve you. You know, it's we hold on so much to, and as a child you must have, well, as a child and growing up, you must have, it was your dad, you know, so on a human level you would want the love of your dad, or the approval, or the, you know, some level of relationship that was healthy. And to have to let that go when you realize it may never get there, and right now it's not there, and I've got to let it go. It's hard, but it's so liberating when you do just let that off your back, you know, and not carry it around.
For sure.
But you know, what a journey for you. And I just think, you know, how you've turned it around. I mean, the speed of it at the start, but then you had, when you lost your mum, because grief is another, it's a hard one to come to terms with, especially because she was probably the one in your life that gave you some level of stability for a while. She taught you things, she helped you spiritually, you know, it's that, and it's a mother's bond with a child. So how did you deal with grief and that grief?
Grief is the emotion that is triggered as a result of loss, right? When we lose something. And I had to experience grief for both of those situations. My mum, obviously, losing her in the physical realm, but also I had to experience grief for my father as well, because, like you said, letting go of the idea that we could have a positive relationship. You know, and I feel like the thing, I mean, I could share like the spiritual lessons, and I could share some practical advice around it. I could go both ways. I think both are important. The spiritual lesson from the grief, I've shared this on another podcast, but I'll share this here because I think it's a very powerful story and powerful metaphor, and just a very real experience that led me to these realizations. I was doing so when I started my healing journey after the attempt to take my own life. So after that happened, I really started to work on myself. You know, I had to start. One of the modalities that I got into was breath work. So I was actually, just one of the things that I had, I was actually I had a meditation certification from my first years as a coach. So when I went onto the cruise ships, I got a Ashtanga yoga certification. And I learned these meditation techniques that I had to teach to people in my classes, right? So pranayama, breathing, and visualizations and meditations, body scanning, mindfulness techniques. I learned these at a very young age. And again, I chose this path. So I chose to have that specific thing at that time because I knew it was going to serve me later. So I had already developed a meditation practice, and I already had developed a connection with breathing techniques and stuff like that. But breath work, like holotropic, deep somatic breath work, it was a new thing for me. So when I was going into my healing journey, the breath work was really helpful for me because it was a tool that allowed me to um, regulate my nervous system,
Yeah.
and actually release suppressed emotions, which I didn't know was a thing until I started doing breath work.
Yeah.
And when I started to get into the breath work, had some really profound experiences where I was able to actually release a lot of this like built up emotions, like anger and this rage and this like sorrow and this grief. And because what I learned through that journey was that emotions are stored in our body. You know,
Yeah.
they're stored in our muscular system. They're connected to the nervous system, and was I learned through these breathwork practices and these breathwork journeys and workshops that I was doing, and eventually got my certification as a breathwork facilitator. I learned through all of this that you can actually release these emotions. Like you don't have to hold on to them. And so I started doing that. I started going through these practices and these what I would call ceremonies to actually release these emotions from my nervous system, from my body, so that I could let go of the old and step into the new, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had this really profound experience in one of my breathwork journeys, and it was like a very spiritual experience. I um, had a breathwork ceremony that I went in. It was like probably like an hour long journey, and towards the end of the journey, I had like what I would call an outer body experience, right? And the outer body experience was a very like it was a very visionary experience because my third eye just opened, and I just had this like deep, vivid visionary experience where I saw a lot of colors, and it was the first time I ever really had like this like wide open third eye experience. You know, I've never really I had hints of it in my childhood, but
Yeah.
not like this. Had this experience, and then I felt and saw the spirit of my mum come to me
Wow.
in this
Okay.
journey, right? And this was like the first time I have ever felt a spirit before, like the spirit of my mum. I knew it was her. I just felt it was like an intuitive knowing that this was my mum. I could hear her, like she was speaking to me, communicating to me. She came into this. She came into my awareness, and she showed me all these visions, right? And one of the visions that she showed me was, first and foremost, she showed me this like a image of the tree of life, right? The
Okay.
tree of life, which is
Yeah.
this big image of this tree. It was a big, beautiful tree, and the tree was beautiful. It had colors and it had fruits on it, and there was like rainbows in the background. It was this beautiful vision. I remember it clear as day in my mind. I could see this visionary tree of life, and it was beautiful. And I remember the feelings that I had when I saw it was like amazement. It was like I was in awe, right? And then at the snap of a finger, there was a lightning bolt that hit the tree, and the tree burst into flames,
Right.
and the sky clouded over. It started raining, and then it just disintegrated into nothing.
Oh wow.
Right? The tree
Right.
was just completely destroyed, and I was like, and then I went from amazement and awe to sadness and fear. I was like, what just happened? What's going on?
Yeah.
And then with another instant, I saw a new tree grow. So
Oh, right.
a new tree grew,
Yeah.
and within a few seconds, this new tree had blossomed into this brand new tree again. So it was the cycle of life.
Yes.
And my
Yeah.
mum, my spirit of my mum,
Yeah.
she showed me this because she was like, this is the cycle of life. This is part of life. This is what happens to the earth. This is what happens to the trees. This is what happens to your planet,
Yeah.
and this is what happens to us. You know,
Right.
we live, and then we die, and that is just a part of life. And we've been conditioned to think that that's wrong and it shouldn't happen. But it's the one definitive fact of life that we live and we die.
Yes.
That's one thing that we're certain of, you know,
Yeah.
and we can't change that. So when she showed me this, it gave me this of this higher perspective of her death, and she showed me that that was supposed to happen.
Right.
It wasn't.
Okay.
It was nothing to be angry at God about. You
Yeah.
know, nothing to be angry at the world about. It was supposed to happen that way. It was part of her journey. It was part of her soul contract on this planet, and it was something that just had to happen. You know, it was not a bad, wrong thing. It just happened, and it was exactly what was supposed to happen. And I wasn't able to accept that up until that
Right.
moment.
Yeah.
When that moment happened, when she
Yeah.
showed me that vision, I was able to accept her death, and I was able to accept and forgive myself because I was so hard on myself. I thought I had something to do with it. I was responsible for it for some reason. I was able to accept it. I was able to let go of any guilt that I had around, that situation. And then after that vision, it zoomed up to the cosmos, the universe, and I saw my higher self, what I would call my higher self, and this higher self was like the the greatest version of myself that I was destined to become in my life. I saw this
Right.
future version of myself. He was on stages, he was speaking, he was, you know,
Do what you're
performing,
doing.
doing exactly what I'm doing. I saw that version of myself, and
Wow.
I saw
Yeah.
that the secret, it's a sequence of visions and events. I saw that I needed to go through that death experience
Yeah.
to be then reborn as this new
Yeah.
version of myself. And that was my spiritual initiation
Yeah.
into becoming this version of myself that I was destined to be. And it all made sense. I just saw this big picture vision. It all made sense. And in
Yeah.
that moment, I had this huge, I'll never forget it. I had this huge release
Yeah.
of emotion. I cried, I sobbed, but it was not tears of pain, it was tears of joy.
Yeah.
Because, and it's funny because my mum's name was Joy. It was
Oh.
tears of joy because I
Yeah.
knew it all made sense to me. It just like
Yeah.
there was this
It
moment of
all
clarity.
clicked. Yeah.
Like you said, you change
Yeah.
perspectives. In trauma therapy, they call it just, I don't know the specific phrase of it, but there's a terminology which is just when you are able to see your traumas from a positive perspective.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't remember the name of it, but that happened to me in that moment. And
Okay.
I was like, okay, it all makes sense. I see why
Yeah.
this happens because now I know where I'm going. And when I had that full release, I felt this energy leaving my body. It was like this, when you're tense, right?
Yeah.
And then you like relax and
Yeah.
you just like your body relax. It was like a full body tension release.
Right.
I'll never forget it. It was profound. And when that tension released and all that emotion came out, and I had that visionary experience, it changed me. Something changed
Yeah.
within me, and I came out of that experience a completely different person. And I remember I was never the same since. Now, don't get me wrong, I still had a lot of healing to do, um, and there's still a lot to work on. But it was a massive change, and my whole demeanor, my whole personality, my whole like all that heaviness, all that like darkness that I was carrying,
Yeah.
I just let it all go.
It's like a reward, isn't it? At the end, I think it's such a journey to get to that point, and to embrace that higher perspective. I think that has to come before that full release. But I remember feeling something similar when I kind of went through my own journey with this, and I just it takes a lot. But it ultimately, I think we have to give ourselves permission to just let go and grow and step into the unknown without trepidation. It's when that rebirth process is a lot of it is trusting in yourself and the universe, God, whatever you believe, to work in a way that gets you to a better place, and you're going forward with kind of a different mindset, positivity, and a knowing, that inner knowing that you've gone through for a reason. You've taken on the lessons, you've healed those emotions and the trauma, and you're deserving of the life you want. And I found for myself for a long time, I completely lost that feeling of deserving to be happy and do the things in life I want to do. I think when you get to a dark place, it's so easy to let everything kind of come down on you and just be in a survival state and not appreciate life. And life is a wonderful thing, you know, as you said, we know one day we won't be here, so make the most of what we've got. And you know, we get one life in this body, so I just think it's an amazing journey. And you know, I think anyone watching will probably be in awe of the journey you've gone through. And I hope people out there can, you know, take inspiration from Jesse's kind of journey, the things the difficult stuff, the positive stuff that's come out of it, where you can get to when you just let go and believe in yourself and focus your energy on what you want, because we're so bombarded with negativity in the world. You know, what's happening in the media, what's happening in the world, there is a lot of negativity, but it's kind of balancing that, or at least, you know, sometimes just focusing on yourself, and knowing that you can create that change. And when you create it within you, there really is a ripple effect, and your world can change. So thank you so much for sharing so deeply what you've gone through, but also your amazing kind of outcome, where you're at, how you're. I'm so happy for you that you're, you know, you are where you are, and you're living your dreams now. And yeah. Thank you very much, Jesse. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Land of the dreamers, city of danger. Came from the trenches, walked through the darkness, fighting temptations. Surrounded by devils, I'm trying to stay faithful, still a believer. Got God on my side, a spiritual war, and angels and demons. The land of the dreamers, city of danger. Came from the trenches, walked through the darkness, fighting temptations. Surrounded by devils, I'm trying to stay faithful, still a believer. Got God on my side, a spiritual war, and angels and demons.